Okay, we're going to take a quick look at installing an operating system. Now, this chapter has a lot of granular information about installing an operating system and some very great information that's telling you what's happening in each one of these steps when it's installing. But I think it's very important to understand the generals of what's going on behind the scenes. Basically, the overall headings of this is what's happening during an install process. So let's take a look. First, you have to boot from the media. That traditionally, right, would be a CD, DVD, ROM drive. So now you can boot from a flash drive. I will point out that you just cannot copy an ISO image to a flash drive and expect that to work. There's other processes you have to go through. If you're interested in doing that, let me know. I'll make another video on using Rufus or something like it that actually creates an install media. So it's not too straightforward, although these days you can get a hard copy of Windows 10 and it'll come on a flash drive instead of a DVD, and you can boot straight from that and install Windows 10. Now, as a note, for most of us dealing with Windows 10 and 11, you're dealing with that basically off of a system that's kind of already pre-installed. And so you get a brand new system, you open it up, and away you go. And you finish the install process of Windows 10 or Windows 11. That's what happens when you get that notebook. Part of it's already installed. And they have created a drive that basically, it's not hidden really, but it's hidden from the normal user, that it's actually pulling the install out of. So it's not actually on the drive that it's installed to, it's in a hidden place. They can go over and get that install file and start an install process. So if you're dealing with standard stuff, right? If you've got Ubuntu that you want to install on a system, power on the system, and now I'm going to install Ubuntu, you have to be able to boot from some media that has that installed. And again, kind of the easiest way to do it is to have a DVD drive with that information on there. Otherwise, there are extra steps you have to go through to get the ISO file that you downloaded and then put that onto a flash drive that will then basically pretend like it's a DVD. So you got to successfully boot from that. When you boot from that, it actually will come up and have some screen that will let you choose to install it. So we looked at that in the Linux portion as we get started. In Fedora, the way it's a live CD and how you have to go ahead and install that, which is very common. But basically, at some point, say it's Windows 10, it's going to come up and say, hey, I'm Windows 10. Do you want to install this? And you have to say, yes, I want to install that, and then agree to the terms and conditions that let you install it. Once that happens, there's a lot of other things that'll happen in the meantime. As a matter of fact, update might happen right after that before you get to storage. This is not super clear. It's not, I can say 1, 2, 3, and then from there, this may be the fourth step. That's why I didn't number these. This may be the fourth step when it actually says, okay, before I install, I'm going to go out to the web and get an update to make sure that happens. And you can imagine if it's going to go to the web and get an update before it actually installs, then you're actually going to have to set up your Wi-Fi, and those kinds of things will happen. Normally, though, you're going to agree to terms. It's going to say it's copying a bunch of stuff and doing things, and it may have you like set, this is the region I'm in if it's Linux or something. But the next big topic that you'll hit is set up the storage. In other words, I'm booting off of this media over here that I am going to install from. So I need a place to put it. I can't install back into the place that I booted from. So I want to set up storage. That's when it's going to find, as we would say, your C drive in Windows, and set that up, or find your storage. Now, these days, all this is very easy. You actually, once it comes up with that screen, you normally just have to select the drive, right? You just have to click, I want you to put it there, and it takes care of everything. Even in Linux, it just takes care of everything. Both Windows and Linux have the ability for you to go in and mess around with the drive. So once you get to set up storage, you're really dealing with a partition volume manager that allows you to deal with the hard drive directly, or hard drives, and what you want to do with them. However, again, they'll do it all for you. And honestly, that is the best thing to do. Unless there's like a real particular thing you want to get done, you're not being more of a power user by saying, I want this or I want that. They know what the OS needs. They know what needs to be set up behind the scenes, and you're much better just saying, set it up the way you feel you need to. Normally, what is that? That's actually saying, I've got a 4 terabyte drive, and so I'm going to take and make most of that part of your storage that you'll see within the operating system. And then I'm going to take and hide this one that'll have install files on it, basically a recovery partition. And then if you're running in Linux, I'm going to create a swap drive. And that doesn't mean creating another physical disk. It means creating a virtual volume that Linux actually doesn't have a swap file in the OS. Windows does. And, we're not going to get into all of that. But basically, it's a file that it treats like RAM, that it pretends like it's RAM. And in Windows, it's just on your C drive with the operating system. I should say that. Wherever you installed the operating system, that's where it is. And it's just this file that shrinks and grows depending on what Windows needs. In Linux, they actually create a partition and they name it a swap, and it's a particular format, and then they use that. So it will install. So during the setup, you just click next, and this is what it's doing. It's going, okay, I'm installing to this location. I'm going to set up a swap drive, or within Windows, I'm going to set up this swap file instead of a drive. And I'm going to also create a place where basically I can have a backup of this OS. That's why when you get a brand new machine that's got Windows 10 or 11 on it, this is already done. And you just complete it from that point on. So once this happens, the storage is all set up, then that's actually when the install process really begins for any operating system. That's the, okay, let's take it out of this RAM place I put it, or over in this other storage area, and put it into where you're going to boot from, and just starts to do that install. And then finally, we get to the last portions of kind of customizing things, and that is different across operating systems. Again, they may do date and time. They may have you choose desktop backgrounds. They might have you do all sorts of stuff, but there is one major thing you have to do, and that is create a user or set an admin password. So depending on the OS, it'll actually come up and say, you're going to create an admin account. What's the password for it? Or we've already created this admin account. What password do you want to give it? Or that's already been done and it's hidden. This is Windows 10 and 11 that does this. We already have an admin account and it's hidden in there. Now you go ahead and create your user. And because of all the online stuff today, this process often becomes the most confusing part, because on Windows, it's like, do you want to tie it into your Outlook account? Which honestly, if you have one, do that. Depending on your version, it may say, are you part of a business and you want to actually access Active Directory? And you may be like, I don't even know what that is, right? You have a lot of different options. Instead of just the standard, I'm going to create a local account on the system, and then I'll worry about all the rest later. I will tell you on Windows 10 and 11, yes, you can create a local account, and I show that in one of the videos where we're installing things, and you do that, but you can also just tie it into your Outlook. And that's what I would suggest. Microsoft does not force you like Google to say you have to have a Google account in order to use this computer, which is what they do at Chrome or Android. But you miss out on a lot of functionality of tying in Windows to the web without having an Outlook account. And I would say make one, even if you're not going to use the email address, make one so you can use all the file exchange and everything. And then finally, the important updates. After the OS installs itself, you may be doing other things, right? Setting the screen resolution, or adding more user accounts, or changing the desktop. You'll do, I'm going to install Chrome because I want Chrome on there, right? You're going to do that kind of thing. In the background, it's doing important updates. And normally how we see that is it downloads them. It downloads them and says, hey, there's important updates I need to install. On a lot of versions of Linux, it doesn't do that. Instead, it says, hey, there's important updates to get or install. And when you say, yeah, go ahead and get those, then it goes out and starts to download them. Either way, they don't stop you from doing everything else you're wanting to do. You can go ahead and use the OS, but it is important to get those updates installed immediately because a lot of those are security patches. So you may be dealing with a version of the OS that's a year old, and there's a bunch of updates that need to happen. I've got versions of Windows 10 going back quite a ways, 2016. And when I install that version, right, the first thing I do is like, okay, let's start the updates. And that takes forever because I'm very many years away from that. But that is the basic situation that you're dealing with any operating system and the process they're going through. So in this chapter, as they really break it down granularly, really look at the fact that this is what it fits in. You got to boot from a media. You have to choose to install it. You have to agree to their terms, and then you set up the storage. And this is what it's doing during that. And then finally, the install begins, and you will be asked to set up a user or choose an admin password, and then do the updates after. So if you got questions, again, let me know. Love to answer questions, and take care of yourselves.